My name is Giovanna Massei, and I lead a group of researchers at the Animal and Plant Health Agency in York, working on fertility control for wildlife. We develop and test a variety of contraceptives for wildlife, and the species we have worked with range from rats, grey squirrels, wild boar, feral cattle, and feral goats, to mention just a few. We have worked on these for many decades now, and we specialize in both developing contraceptives with a number of partners around the world, and also with testing them in captive control experiments and in the wild. We now have several projects around the world, for instance, in Spain, in Hong Kong, in Italy, and obviously in the UK, on testing fertility control for wildlife. The reason for this research comes mainly from public demand for alternatives to lethal methods to manage wildlife. There is a growing public demand for alternatives or other tools that can be complementary to culling. And so we are here to provide these tools. We have worked in a number of contexts, for instance, in urban areas, but also in rural areas, and we work both with wildlife and with feral livestock, again, in a number of countries. The project supported by the UK Squirrel Accord is something we are particularly keen on, because it's a multi-year project that gives us the possibility of both developing and testing new contraceptives, oral contraceptives for wildlife. We work with both oral and injectable contraceptives, but to manage wildlife in a cost-effective way, we should really think about oral contraceptives. And this is where our project comes into play. We are developing new formulations of oral contraceptives by testing several compounds, but we are also, and that's one part of the research. The second part is to deliver these contraceptives to squirrels. So the developing part presents several challenges, because we have to get the dose right, obviously the right compound, but also the dose, the frequency, the proportion of animals that eat the bait that will eventually contain a contraceptive. In terms of challenges, both sides of the research present several that we are slowly but surely overcoming. The formulation of the oral contraceptive, so we are testing different chemicals, and we need to know the dose, when to give it to animals. We need to make sure that the contraceptive has no side effect on the physiology and on the behavior of the animals. And this will be done in captive controlled environment. For the field site, very few people stop and think about the challenges of feeding an oral contraceptive to 3 million squirrels, particularly in areas where, like urban areas, where the public will not tolerate anything else. So there are a number of issues for squirrels. A lot of people do not like to see them culled, even if they're a non-native species. So fertility control, particularly in urban areas, might provide the ideal tool. So in the field, we are already testing. We've made a lot of progress in testing which proportion of the population will consume the bait that will have the contraceptive, how many hoppers that are the feeders, the bait feeders that we're using, will have to be placed in an area to make a certain proportion of the population susceptible to the contraceptive. We are testing how long the duration of the contraceptive, how long the contraceptive will last, whether males take the bait more than females or the other way around, and how do we optimize the cost and the feasibility of doing this on a large scale. For this last part, we are collaborating with volunteers. They have been brilliant, because we have met a number of volunteers that are very keen to work with us and to test some of the methods that we have developed, not least we have developed a method based on camera traps to assess the density of squirrels, so the number of squirrels in a woodland, so that at least we can plan the effort needed to remove the squirrels from the woodland. One of the questions that we often have is, why are you working on fertility control? Why can't you go and cull animals, particularly because they're non-native? And the answer to this question is generally that there are a number of people, and growing numbers of people, that oppose culling or wouldn't engage with culling. And this has been one of the issues in the UK. Obviously, culling will remove a number of squirrels, but you need a lot of effort and you need to check the traps every day. And this means a lot of effort that has to be placed, staff effort, which is not necessarily cost effective. Also, you need to cover large areas for it to make a difference. And recently there was a paper published by social scientists that suggested that by interviewing about 3,000 people or 3,700 people, they suggested that the majority of people interviewed were interested in fertility control more than in any other method to manage grey squirrels. So to me, that suggests that in the future we'll have a number of people, including volunteers, that would be more than happy to put out oral contraceptives, fewer and fewer that will be happy to cull animals. And I'm not saying culling shouldn't be used, but I'm saying that we are trying to develop complementary methods or alternative methods to it. When we started this research, one of the main aims of the field side of it was to assess what is the proportion of the population of squirrels that will eat a bait that in the future will contain the contraceptive. And we used a compound called rhodamine B. Rhodamine B is something that you can add to a bait. The bait doesn't have to contain the contraceptive for this test. And you put the bait in a feeder, in a hopper, and then you let the squirrels feed from it. And then you trap the squirrels and you take some hair. Rhodamine B is as orange as my scarf, is bright pink, bright orange, and will be trapped in hair or whiskers. So if you take hair from a sample of the population, you will know what is the proportion of the population that ingested the bait. And if you do it after a few weeks, and you do it again after a few weeks, you will have distinct bands, so on the hair or a whisker, so that you will know that the animal has had at least 2 feeding bouts on the bait that you wanted it to eat. In terms of how the research is going at the moment, notwithstanding COVID that has set us back for a few months, I would say as best as it can. It's field research. That means that some things will not go to plan. In fact, a lot of things never go to plan. In my 30 years, my 30-year career, I can't think of any trial that went as predicted. But at the same time, I think it's going very well. It is also attracting a lot of attention from a number of bodies, a number of organizations, both in the UK and in Europe, but also from the States, that are looking at this as the ideal way of adding a new tool to the toolbox for wildlife management. And the reason why we are very excited about this is that an oral contraceptive for squirrels is very, very likely to affect other mammals. So if we wanted to contracept other mammals that are overabundant, that have an environmental or economic impact, we could use the same contraceptive, obviously making it target specific through delivery to reduce the number of those animals.